everyone, my name is NHS Jobs and I work as a doctor in the NHS. I want to thank you all for joining us on our third episode of Frequently Asked Questions on the Road to UK. Now let's get started. Okay, now let's talk about what is an acceptable pattern of internship. I'm sure you guys have heard this a lot. GMC will not give you full registration if you don't have an acceptable pattern of internship. But what is an acceptable pattern of internship? Let's first break it down. Wherever you are doing your internship, it needs to be in a hospital that has been approved by your medical regulatory board. This can be a private hospital, this can be a public hospital, but it needs to be an approved teaching hospital by your medical regulatory board. This is the most important thing that you need to consider before you think about, is my internship acceptable or not? Next, how long is your internship? Most countries have an internship of 12 months. Some have it shorter and those aren't considered acceptable. GMC will take either 12 months or 18 months, but there are certain stipulations that they have for these internships. And let's talk about if you have 12 months of internship in your country. So in those 12 months, 3 of those months must be in medicine and 3 of those months must be in surgery. A lot of times people ask me, well, does that mean it has to be 3 months of general medicine? Does it have to be 3 months of general surgery? No, it can be medicine and their allied branches. So it can be general medicine, it can be pediatrics, it can be psychiatry. All of these fall under medicine. So if you have 3 months of that, you're golden. Now for surgery, it doesn't have to be 3 months of general surgery. It can be general surgery, gynae and obs, trauma and orthopedics, ophthalmology. All of those are considered surgical specialties. They fall under the surgical heading. So 3 months of medicine, 3 months of surgery. The rest of those months, you can do whatever else. Some people have gynae and obs, some people continue medicine for 6 months, some people do surgery for 6 months. That's still fine because you've met that minimum requirement of at least 3 months. If, however, you have a university or medical college that is 18 months in duration, you have an 18-month internship. What you need to keep into consideration there is it has to be 6 months of medicine or 6 months of surgery. It's the same stipulations that it can be those allied medicines or allied surgical specialties, but they need to be 6 months in duration. If you've not completed your internship within 2 years of graduating or completing your medical degree, it is up to GMC for whether or not they will accept your internship or not. So if you're on the fence about whether or not you want to do USMLE or PLAB, since USMLE does not require internship in order to join residency, many of us sometimes will try for the steps a couple of times and then think, okay, maybe PLAB is an option. I would recommend, if you're not 100% committed to the USA, to at least do your internship and then think about maybe later in the future, you might come back and try for the UK, mainly for this thing, so you don't have an issue later on with the GMC. All right, so as you all know, PLAB is a one way that you can get GMC registration, but let's talk about the other ways that you can get GMC registration aside from PLAB. The first one is an accepted postgraduate qualification, like MRCP or MRCS. There are a bunch of others that are on the GMC website, but most people tend to go via either MRCP or MRCS. The other one is via MTI, or the Medical Training Initiative. So let's first talk about the acceptable postgraduate qualifications. So for that, if you decide in your home country that you want to complete, MRCP or MRCS, you need to complete all parts of the exam. You can't just take one part and then apply for GMC registration. You can't just take one part of PLAB 1 and apply for GMC registration. It's the same thing, okay? So with this, when you take MRCP, let's say, you need to complete MRCP Part 1, Part 2, and PACES, then take IELTS or OET, and then apply for GMC registration. Same thing for MRCS. You need to complete all parts, take IELTS or OET, and then you apply for GMC registration. And you have GMC registration all well and done without PLAB, but when you get your application done for GMC registration, you will need to come to the United Kingdom for your ID check. I know this isn't necessary anymore for individuals who have taken PLAB 2 after October, but for the acceptable postgraduate qualifications, this rule still stands that you need to come for the ID check. really this is because they've not seen you before. I mean, for a lot of these acceptable postgraduate qualifications, you can complete all the exams outside of the United Kingdom. So they need to see you with your documents in the UK when you apply for GMC registration. Now for MTI. So MTI is basically it's a training program for 2 years. It can be up to 2 years, it can be less than that as well. But essentially, you're not coming to the UK to stay here forever. It's more that you're coming, getting some training, and then they expect you to go back. You won't be on a Tier 2 visa, which will be the working visa that most of us would be on if we came, let's say, via PLAB, or we got a job via the acceptable postgraduate routes. You'd be on a Tier 5. So that's kind of a short stay visa. You come, you do your training, you complete your training, and you go back home. Since you still get GMC registration via this route, you can always then later on apply for jobs via NHS Jobs and then come back on a Tier 2 visa, but you would first have to go back home and then apply. MTI is a pretty lengthy process. There's a lot of things that I could explain right now, but just for the sake of brevity, if you want to check out our description box below, we have an entire post dedicated to the MTI process and on the processes of how else you can apply to get GMC registration aside from PLAB. So a lot of us come to the UK with experience already. We aren't necessarily fresh interns or fresh graduates or anything like that. And if you've managed to get GMC registration, first of all, congrats. Second of all, you must be wondering, now where do I start? You may have had experience back home 4, 5, 6 years. You may have been a registrar back home and you think, oh, that's fine. I'll start off with a registrar post here in the UK. Now you can. You can find a non-training registrar post fairly easily. But my suggestion to you is don't go straight into getting into a registrar post, mainly because you don't know how the system here works, and being a registrar comes with a lot of responsibilities, some that you might not be accustomed to because you've not seen how the system is here. You can instead try and apply for a non-training SHO post just for a couple of months. No one's saying that you need to stay dedicated to this post for years or something like that. 3, 4, 5, 6 months, be an SHO, see the system, understand, get your feet wet, know what is expected of a registrar. You can maybe even talk to any of the registrars that you'd be working with at that time. Once you feel comfortable with the system, you can even speak to your department and see if they have a registrar post open, or if you want to go somewhere else, you can apply for NHS Jobs there, and you have a little bit of that experience, which will help bolster your NHS profile and you feeling confident when you speak in the interview that you know how the system works and why you think you're qualified to be working as a registrar. If you're still confused about where you should start out from, that's fine. We have this flowchart that explains everything from different levels, and still, if you're still concerned about where you need to start or where you need to go, feel free to ask questions in our comment box below. If there would be one question that seems to give people a lot of confusion, it's about post-graduation. Now, when we hear post-graduation, for some people it means getting an academic degree like an MS, MSc, MD. And for some other people it means, no, the clinical training that you undergo. So let's talk about that in respect to how it works in the United Kingdom. So if you decide to do an MS or an MD degree, while it does give you points on your training application, it's not mandatory to do it. And if you don't do it, you can still get into training. If you do it, you can still go into training. It's just something that you need to keep in mind. Is this something that you want to do? But it will not be your automatic ticket to GMC registration. We already talked about the routes to get into GMC registration like PLAB or any of those acceptable postgraduate qualifications. That is how you get into GMC registration. If afterwards you want to get a degree, that's up to you. But don't think with these academic degrees that you will get GMC registration. I know a lot of us get confused about this because in a lot of countries, you need to do an MD or an MS, and then you get into a training post, and then you get into specialty training, and then you become a consultant. It's not like that in the UK. Another thing you need to keep in mind, if you want to do a postgraduate degree like an MS or an MD, you will have to pay for it because you're going to this university or this teaching hospital or what have you. You are paying them so that you get this degree. If, however, you enter into a training program, into a clinical training program, they will pay you because you are working for them. You do not have to pay them. For some reason, a lot of us think, and I guess it's because that's how it is back home for a lot of us, if you get into a training program, oh, I'll have to spend so much money into this training program and then I can become a specialist or then I can become a consultant in the UK. No, this entire process you're getting paid. You're getting paid a nice amount of money at that. So don't be concerned about that. You don't have to do an academic degree, but if you choose to, you will have to pay for it. That being said, when you enter into a clinical training post, they will pay you. Okay? Alrighty guys, thank you again for joining me on another episode of our frequently asked questions on the road to UK. If you still have questions or we've not answered them in any of our previous videos, we've given a link below where you can submit any questions or queries that you might have. You can also comment below. That's fine. We'll get to it hopefully in our next video. But as always, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Bye-bye.